Hey guys, we are back for a Star Wars Black Series review, and it's been a little while. I think the last thing we did was the Rey and DJ wave of figures. So we have got the first wave of solo figures that is starting to creep out now. I was able to get a few of these from my local comic shop, and you know, I had my rant a while back, and I'm sticking to it. I am not buying Han, I am not buying Lando, and when the second wave comes out, I'm not buying Qi'ra. So I got the Range Trooper, I actually got two of him, and I got Tarkin. We're going to kick things off today with the Range Trooper. Now this guy comes in the standard Star Wars Black Series box. He is number 64. He's got a little bit of a write-up that kind of tells you a little bit about the troopers, but not a whole lot. You can see him there in the window. We've got that same style artwork on the box. So it's exactly what you expect at this point, so let's just get right into it and pull him out. Alright guys, so here he is out of the package, and there is a lot going on with this figure, from its overall look, to its design, to its material usage, soft goods, rubbery plastic. It's just got an entirely different design from any trooper we have ever seen, and I am very excited to take a look at this guy. So we'll do the normal stuff. We'll you know, look at sculpt and paint and all of that. But we'll absolutely kick it off with articulation, because there's a lot to talk about here based on what they had to do to make this guy move in this crazy new armor. Alright, so let's move this guy around and see what he can and what he can't do. And he surprisingly can do more than I expected, because as you can see, he is a bulkier figure. He's definitely got the interesting legs down here. From the knees down, he is a whole different beast. But as far as articulation goes, he's mostly pretty standard with a few little changes. So we've got a swiveling head. It doesn't really have any up or down. Like, it does go back just a slight bit, but it's very, very minimal. He just hits that breastplate immediately. Arms can go all the way out. They can swivel all the way around this. The soft goods, the fur collar that he has, obviously lets him move everywhere. We have got, there's nothing at the bicep, which is pretty normal. We got a single jointed elbow, and we've got hinged and rotating wrists, so pretty standard stuff there. He's got a waist twist. He has a little bit of bob action, but the armor plates just, they're going to restrict that movement, and I don't think that's to be unexpected here. Legs can go out a surprising bit, honestly. That's a little further than I expected, but they don't really have much kick forward, because the legs immediately hit this plate here right in front of his junk. So we can kick back a little bit. There is a thigh cut in there. It's kind of hard to get to, but it's there. We have a single joint at the knee, which is decent for such bulky legs, and that's also where your rotation is. It rotates at that joint there, and then there is a hinge at the ankle, and kind of shows off some of the weirdness going on with this leg. If you look right there, you can see, you know, kind of the inner workings of whatever's going on with the feet on these guys. So that's just a hinge. There is no real movement. It can kind of sway back and forth, but I don't think that's really intended. It's kind of just the joint working itself around. Really, it's just a hinge there. There's too many bits and bobs in the way to really make it do a whole lot more, but he has, for the most part, everything you would expect. But for such a bigger figure with some craziness going on with the legs, I think Hasbro did exactly what you think they could do to make him move as good as possible. And I'm glad that even though there isn't rotation at the ankle, we do have that rotation at the knee, so you can kind of pose him a little bit better, and he's not just standing legs straight up and down. Now, paint, sculpt, the overall look of the figure, that's clearly what is most important here. And there is, honestly, there's a lot going on here. He is very similar to a lot of troopers we've seen. You know, immediately things of like a snow trooper jumps out, because he is clearly something to do with a more frigid environment. And then the troopers from Rogue One, his helmet is definitely inspired by like the Tank Commander or a Scarif trooper. I think personally that it's a little more Tank Commander than Scarif because of the angles on the helmet, but it's still very much its own thing. It's not a replacement or a copy of any of those, and the armor that he has is not a copy of the Snowtroopers. I originally thought his chestplate was a Snowtrooper chestplate. It is not. It's its own thing. It's its own new sculpt. So it's very much similar, but different, giving him his own kind of unique feel. Now, as far as the overall look of the figure, I've said from the get-go, I think he looks really cool. I'm sold on this design, and I'm very happy with Hasbro's execution of how he looks. I think it's very good. The plastic on the arms very much looks and almost feels like it's a thick leather, the rubbery. This is supposed to be the fur coat aspect of him. This is kind of the trailing off fabric. You can see the fur underneath there. It's all textured underneath the rubbery plastic here, and then there's a lot of kind of fringing that's been done. You can see it's got sculpted wrinkles all along the back. He does have kind of a backpack going on here, probably a heater or something, I guess is what that's going to be. And of course he has the big fur frilly collar, and it is soft goods, and it is very much a furry type of soft goods. It is something that just sort of sits around the neck so it can swivel. You can move it around, but it definitely does seem to be sewed underneath the chin, so it will stay in place and it'll stay on him. I think that's really cool. I don't know how practical this design really is. I mean, if he can be heated from within, why does he need a fur collar? But I'm also happy with the design. I think it's different. I think it looks cool, and it actually translates to figure form pretty well. This lays on him very nicely. You can kind of poof it up if you want to get crazy with him, give him a big fur collar like that, but it also sits and hangs very nicely. You can see it kind of droops over the back, and I think that works really well. He does have the Snowtrooper-esque belt piece that's here. This piece right here is kind of similar to what's on a Snowtrooper, but again, it's not the same. It's different. He's got some pouches going on. We've got like, I don't think these are really code cylinders, but they're cylinders on his arm. We've got these kind of armor plates on the wrists here, and you can see kind of the fringing of the fur underneath the jacket poking through onto the gloves, which are also sculpted with some little plating on them as well. So overall, I mean, he's very, very different. Now for a closer look at the helmet really quick, just to give you an idea, it is, like I mentioned, similar to the trooper helmets that we've seen in Rogue One, the Scarif Trooper, the Tank Commander, things like that. I do feel like it's a little bit broader, it's a little bulkier, it seems to be overall slightly bigger, but you can definitely see that influence all over this design. Very much one of those specialized troopers that existed before A New Hope, or maybe during, because we don't really know how far-reaching some of these troopers were, but I think it's a really cool design. He very much looks hulking and menacing, and something about this helmet really kind of brings that together. He's also got that really cool gold visor, which is honestly a very different look and overall thing for a Stormtrooper to have something like that. It's a nice metallic paint, and it's very cleanly applied. The helmet does, to kind of lend itself to the whole frontier aspect of this type of trooper, have a lot of weathering. It's very dingy and dirty, and that kind of leans itself into the rest of the trooper as well, because he's got that all over his armor, and this seems to be tampoed on because it is exactly the same on my second trooper that I have, so you won't see a whole lot of variation between those, I don't think. Of course, the biggest, and literally and figuratively, I suppose, the biggest thing that is really, really striking on this figure is, of course, these legs. So let's take a look at what he's working with below the belt, and he has got the straps that you see on flight suits. They're attached to the fringes of the jacket, and they wrap around those legs. You can see kind of an undersuit almost on the tops of the legs on the thighs. It might be kind of hard to see right here, but right here it seems kind of like fabric almost that leads into these mech style legs. And one thing that, you know, we don't really know is, what does this mean for this trooper? I don't know, did this guy lose his legs and he was replaced with, you know, mechanical feet? Is that the thing for this type of trooper? Do they get their legs chopped off? But at the backside, it kind of looks like these are almost assisting the troopers or something. They are maybe like jump jets almost, that allow them to kind of navigate their terrain a little better, because these certainly look like some sort of actuators, maybe assisting with their movement in these more, you know, rugged terrain that they're working with. But there's no real indication that there's an actual foot in here outside of this little design right here that kind of looks like a boot, but at the same time, I don't really know. And then when you open it up at the hinge, I don't really know, you have no idea what's going on inside of there. That's just the inner workings of it, and it really doesn't lead you to any real conclusion as to whether or not something is inside of this, and we don't know. I'm assuming there's a foot in there, but, you know, we'll use your imagination for the time being. I do like the design on these. I think it's, again, it's different, it's fun, it's cool, it's slightly un-Star Wars. It definitely doesn't look like anything that I'm used to seeing, but I think it's interesting, it's different. It doesn't have a lot of paint on it. I wish there was a little more paint going on here. Like we got the weathering on the helmet and on the chest plate, this could definitely use it. I could use those lines to be filled in at the very least, so I may do that myself. There is a little paint. We've got the blue and the red on here, and then of course we have got some black and then some red on the back there. But there's no real weathering on the legs with that, which I think is probably the one miss in terms of the overall aesthetic of this figure. But outside of all the other cool stuff going on here, I think I might be able to forgive that. Now, of course, he is a trooper. He has a blaster rifle. This is his only accessory. Granted, I don't know if he should or could include more, but we get kind of the standard fare for Black Series. We get the one gun, and this guy is a little different. It's not your standard Stormtrooper blaster rifle, which is what I thought it was when I first saw it in the box, but it's definitely different. It is bigger, the sight is on a different area of the gun, and it's overall got a little more difference to the standard Stormtrooper blaster rifle than I had originally thought. So, you know, it's something different, but very similar, very Imperial, which is good. He can hold it in either hand, but the right hand is more suited for it based on the trigger finger. You can get him to hold it in both hands, having it rest on his left hand. It is a tight fit because he can't really reach across himself too well just because he is so bulky. And then, just for comparison's sake, here is the shot of this new gun next to a Stormtrooper blaster rifle, just so you can see that, yes, there is definitely something different about this gun. So at the end of the day, whether Solo is good, whether it's bad, whether it succeeds, whether it fails, this is a pretty cool representation of what I think is going to be a really interesting new trooper. No matter what it does or doesn't do in this movie, I am sold on this design. I think this figure is really good for all of the limitations this suit kind of imposes on this figure. I think Hasbro's done a really good job articulation-wise. There's a lot of different new sculpt here. I don't really know of anything that's reused on this figure that really jumps out at me. Everything is very fresh while also still looking very similar to classic Star Wars and stuff we've seen from Rogue One. So definitely I am on board, and I'm absolutely glad that I got two. I definitely do not regret picking up a second one of these guys. So be on the lookout for the new Range Trooper figure, guys. That's going to do it for this review. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and share, and until next time.